anyone that's coming into property, things will go wrong.
The government taking the absolute piss. We haven't met new homes targets ever.
Why do you think that is?
It's so archaic.
Yeah.
If you're looking at monthly net returns from a HMO in London, what would you say is a good return? Welcome back to another episode of the PBK podcast. Each and every week we have an amazing special guest, and this week I am joined by Muiz Yusuff. How you doing?
I'm doing blessed, brother. Can't complain.
That's good. It took a little while to get Muiz
I know
on.
this guy's gonna say this.
You knew I was going to say this because I
this.
sent him the WhatsApp. He aired me. I sent him the DM. He fobbed me off. I had to see him in person and say, brother, please, the people want to know about HMOs.
And I'm here today.
And you came under duress, but we got him here in the end.
Not duress. Everything good timing.
I hear you. It's a very popular saying that you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Exactly.
And today you're supposed to be here. So everybody can learn, obviously, about you, about your journey, but most specifically about HMOs, because that's an area where you've really thrived and become an expert. So for those that don't know, what is a HMO?
So HMO stands for HMO stands for House of Multiple Occupancy, and it's basically like a house that's been converted into 3 or more rooms, and generally you're elevating on the rental price in terms of comparing it to a single let, basically.
So I think when it comes to HMOs, I guess one place that a lot of people get unstuck is around rules, regulations, different council requirements. So we're going to kind of delve into some of those things. So what is the standard requirements in terms of where do you need a HMO license, where don't you need one, as a starting point?
So I would probably say the starting point is to go on the council's website to see exactly what the rules and regulations are in terms of that borough, to make sure that you're doing everything particularly right. And when I started getting to HMOs, I didn't want to make no mistakes. So I was constantly on the website, phoning them up, even though they don't pick up the phone, but just trying to make sure that you're doing everything right. Because the worst thing you want to do is start the whole process, spend all that money on the works, and then now they come in and say, oh, well, you need to go for planning, or you haven't done this right, and then you're ripping out things, and now everything's cost you twice. So it doesn't make no sense. So generally, what you need in a HMO is obviously like fire doors, interlink alarms, and thumb locks on the doors, and a few other things like that as well.
Yeah. So you need the kind of general sort of health and safety, fire protection, because there's multiple occupants. Maybe they don't know each other. They're not going to have that same communication
100%.
as, like a single family unit. So outside of, and we're going to get into like things like selective licensing, additional licensing, but let's talk about how many, if there's no selective licensing, no additional licensing, and no Article 4, how many people can you rent to and before you need a HMO license?
Good question. So you can get away with having 4 and below. So 4 and below would be enough, and you won't need a license. And I think there's some parts in Kent, like Gillingham and parts of Gravesend, that you can do that in as well. And I guess if you don't want to go through the whole paying the license, going through that process, then you don't need that. But you still need to make sure that the house has the fire doors and is compliant with the HMO regulations. And
is it like when go on? Sorry.
But also there's another thing as well. Depending on how you're renting the property or who you're renting the property to. So if you're giving the property to like a social housing, like a care home, in some cases they don't need for the property to have a HMO license because they're CQC registered or they're Ofsted registered. So they bypass that because they go through that process.
That they want to make their own laws.
Exactly.
Really, if we look at the nuts and bolts of it, if you rent to the council will say, you need a license.
Exactly.
We, on the other hand, we are the license.
Exactly.
So, I mean, there's always ways to make things work, but generally speaking, the reason I say is because I think one like common issue people have with HMOs is the discrepancies between not just different cities, but different councils, different requirements, and trying to work that out. And I think your starting point of looking online to go and see the basics. But for people that are just trying to get to grips with it, a couple other questions. So in terms of, so starting point, sort of 4 or below, don't need a license. And then it's 4 to 6, depending on the borough, you'd be able to do it under just a license, which is effectively like permitted development.
That's it.
What about like national standards for minimum room sizes for like a single occupant?
Yeah, so for example, in different boroughs, it changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of national, I think it's at 6 point, I can't remember, 6.4? Is it 6?
Yeah, I think something like 6.4,
something around that,
6.5,
yeah.
around that.
So, yeah, so that's the average. But in different boroughs, they're slightly bigger. And in some boroughs, in some boroughs, they're slightly bigger. So you have to be careful that you're not only looking at that, you need to look at the website to make sure that it fits in with that criteria.
Early on, I definitely fell foul to just go and look and, okay, yeah, you need 6.5. So doing all my comps, I'm looking at all these rooms, went to go and do something in Croydon. Again, this was pre Article 4.
Yeah.
And like minimum room size for a single occupant is 10 square meters.
Yeah, exactly.
I think dual occupancy was, 12 to 14 at the point.
Yeah.
And that minimum room sizes, that expands out to different areas of the house as well, right?
Exactly. So that information is key because that can affect the numbers in terms of, this HMO. If your intention was to have it as a 5-bed HMO, 6-bed HMO, and now the room sizes are not accurate enough, and now that reduces it, there might not be enough juice in that deal no more. So you need to now think about, does this make sense? And then sort of move it that way.
Because that's really what the model's about.
Exactly.
Lettable rooms.
Exactly.
If a room becomes unlettable, then your returns drop off a cliff.
Yeah, your return on investment is a lot lower, and maybe the GDV as well won't stack up as well.
So GDV, I know, as property people, we love to throw numbers around. I know a lot of you already know this, but maybe some people, this is their first episode. What does GDV mean?
So it's the gross development value of the property, and I guess our aim is to try and push that up as high as possible. And with the HMO model, it's about getting as many rooms as possible, but at the same time making sure that the rental stacks up as well. And in some cases you can go for commercial val, or you can go for bricks and mortar. I tend to go for bricks and mortar, where they also consider the rental amount as well. That's what works in London most of the time. I find that commercial val don't really work in London. It tends to work outside London much better. More
so commercial val, for those that are not familiar, is a val that's basically linked to the profitability of the property. So basically based on how much rent you're able to achieve, they'll take a multiplier of that, and it depending on interest rates and a couple of other factors.
Yeah.
And they'll basically create a valuation based on that as a business, as opposed to as you mentioned, the actual asset, so the bricks and mortar valuation of what it's worth.
Yeah, exactly.
And but both have their validity, but yeah, in London, because property prices are, very high.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, there's not much between it.
In some cases, the commercial value is a lot lower in London. So the end value will be lower in London, so it doesn't make sense.
And also, when they are very close, an actual commercial val tends to be a lot more expensive as well.
Yeah, exactly. Your rates as well. So there's a lot of things to consider in terms of, which route you're going to go down. And that's why it's important to have a really good broker and your power team around you, just to make sure that you're going down the right direction in terms of your goals.
I think that's interesting, touching on the broker side of things. I think a lot of people, they just get the broker that they saw online or saw on Instagram, or the person with the best marketing. But a good broker is worth their weight in gold. Reason being is, anyone can tell you what the rates are, but they need to know if those rates are fit for purpose, both for the property and based on your circumstance. So if you've already got X amount of properties, if you haven't got experience in this deal, if your loan to value based on your overall portfolio is slightly different, the cheapest isn't always the most efficient.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe you're planning to sell the property in the next 2 years, and so you've got to think about early redemption charges. I think you're very right that a good broker and having the right people in your corner is very important. In terms of terminology, again, going back to the HMO side of things, so there's things we touched on that I'd just like you to shed a little bit of light on. So what is selective licensing, if somebody sees that in a borough?
So selective license, from my understanding, I'll describe it in the best way I can. I believe selective license generally it could be any property. It can be a 1 bed or 2 bed. I think Southwark Council in some boroughs they've got selective license, and the property has to have certain requirements as well before it's rented out. And that's
so
what
I think it's
understand.
like they can move the threshold as well, right? So you might move the threshold from like a 4 people sharing to 2 or more people sharing, and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think recently someone told me about. I think they had something at Elephant Castle, and they went through the whole process. They didn't realize they need selective license, and then at the end, when they were trying to refinance, that's when it came up.
Another really sort of popular term around the HMO space is Article 4. We go back and forth on Article 4 quite a lot, just because it's something that it does sometimes come up very much under the radar all of a sudden. What is Article 4 in relation to HMOs?
So it's just basically the borough removing your permit development rights to convert a C3 house into a C4 HMO accommodation. And in some cases where a certain borough might have Article 4 direction, it doesn't mean that you can't get a HMO, in that area. And I think social media kind of tells you can't. Like if it's Article 4, leave it, do not touch it. But in some cases, by doing a bit of research to find out exactly the reason why the Article 4 direction is there in the first place. So for example, if there's too many HMOs in the area, then more than likely you're probably not going to get a HMO there. But if that's not the reason why, and there's another reason, then there's probably a potential there. And if you understand how to maneuver and how to get out of the line, that might be your golden nugget to get more HMOs in that area when everyone else is kind of scared to do investments in that area.
No, definitely. So it removes that. And then beyond that, what's it called when you have over 6 rooms?
Sui generis.
So that is that 6 to anything, or is there a cap on that, or how many?
I've never done a sui generis, if I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
Never done a sui generis. Yeah.
So you focus specifically in that sort of
that six rooms. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know the cap, if I'll be honest with you. But so I do plan to do some of in a couple of years. But yeah, as far as I know, anything over 6 is sui generis, and obviously you have to go through planning for that process, and similar to, the property has to meet certain standards as well, because you're obviously housing a lot more people. And same, even when you got 6 people in the property, there's certain requirements in terms of I don't know if we're going to touch on this later, but in the kitchen, the amount of hobs that you need, the amount of stoves, the sink size, and all this
see
other
when
stuff.
you've got when you're going through this and you're thinking about it and you're like, because your background wasn't initially in property, so then having to think minimum room sizes, but minimum room sizes based on number of occupants. Then number of occupants means minimum size of the kitchen. Kitchen size depends on whether or not you got a living room. It just sounds like they're just constantly moving little bits. Like, how do you stay on top of all of those types of things?
For me, it's about communication with the HMO officer, whoever is in charge of that borough, trying to have a good relationship with them, and clear communication in terms of what my goal is in terms of what I'm planning to do in this area. And that's what's helped. Because if you go based on what you read online and you do everything, in some cases you don't need to do that. So for example, the sink bowl. Read it online. I think it was Illusion Borough actually. The way they explain it is like you need 2 sinks for 6 people.
Yeah, as soon as you get to 5 or above.
Exactly. And you need 8 hobs 6 hobs. Yeah, so 6 hobs. So generally what people do is get 4 hobs. I didn't want to do that because for me it didn't look nice. So I explained to them, look, if I can get away with 5 hobs, would that work? Yeah, that will work. And they put out an email to me. If I get away with a 1.5 sink, would that be okay? And plus I provide a dishwasher. Yes, that will work. So it's just about having that conversation with the HMO officer to understand where you can maneuver.
I think that's it. I think that frustrates me a little bit about that side of things is that sometimes, and this was the most annoying one I had. So I've had the conversation with the local council, and just that I've said, like, right, we know that for 6 people you need 2 ovens, 2 sinks, 2 hobs. But they were happy with, I think it was like a 6 burner hob, 1.5 bowl sink, and a double oven.
Yeah.
Got to the point we went to refinance, valuers' comments came back and said, doesn't meet HMO requirements. But we've got the license in place, so we do in the borough, but they're going off national standards. Obviously, the borough you're operating in, so I think it can be frustrating sometimes, and I think that, but that's property as a whole.
Yeah.
We live our life subject to valuers' comments.
And also, I guess it comes down to who's going to value the property. It comes down to the lender that you go with as well.
The individual on the day sometimes.
And just how they feel. So, but yeah, I just feel having that conversation with the HMO officer, and if you're asking a lot of questions, they will see it that you are trying to make sure that this property is safe for the people that you're trying to put in there, so that they're happy to help. In some cases, I've had HMO officers come out to the property before it's actually been completed to give their advice on, how to do certain things.
I think it's good. Like, when it comes to planning, a lot of the time there's an attitude of us against them, developers against planners. But the reality is that the planner's job is effectively to make sure there's a high standard of home within the local community. If you've got a developer that's on board with that, why would you not want to work alongside them to make sure that it can be delivered? And I think if I was speaking to a planning department, I'd be saying, look, I only make money if you say yes. So I want to do what you want. Just help me deliver it.
Yeah. And I feel the answer is they need to be involved as well. It seems like there's not enough of them in their team, and they got too much workload. But there needs to be someone on the ground to step in and have a look at what's going on, and to say to you, if this is not going to work, instead of refusing the planning, if this is not going to work, this is what we will say yes to. And then that will just make the whole process
more
a lot
collaborative work.
Exactly,
So would that be your kind of go-to? If you could give advice or comment on the planning process at the moment, that planners are potentially overstretched, and then also that want to build a working relationship as opposed to basically become constructive rather than destructive.
I agree. I think a working relationship is always better. Everyone knows where they stand. As you know, property is very expensive. The longer everything is delayed, the more money that you're spending. And if we can be collaborative in the way that we're thinking, then we're going to provide accommodation.
And also bearing in mind that you said obviously you do work with local authorities as well as provide housing. Obviously on your side there's a delay from a finance perspective, which has a financial implication, but also for the person that's waiting for accommodation, that potentially this could be used for emergency housing or could be used for assisted living and things like that. There's also those people that the longer it takes, the less accommodation there is within a borough. So I definitely think there's conversations to be had to make sure it's more productive.
100%.
But I think one of the sticking points is you can only deal with the council where your house is. So if they want to turn around and take 2 months to answer an email, there's no up the chain complaint process or procedure, or I'm going to use somebody else or go private. And I think that's what sometimes as developers is really frustrating. I can tell you the story once that I was in Croydon, lockdown, COVID, peak of COVID, everyone's working from home. I'm thinking, this guy is taking the absolute piss when it comes to my application. It's supposed to be 8 weeks. I think we're 4 or 5 months in at this point.
Jesus.
Getting a reply once every 10 days. We see everyone's working from home. There's no phone numbers, nobody you can call. I go and do an application for something else. So I'm tendering for some work for something through a consultancy. It's like consultancy for planning. Same guy that works for the council is the guy that replied from his private company to do my consultancy work. I said, yeah. The councils need to drive. I get it. There's budget. There's manpower. There's, do you know what I mean? Austerity off the back of all of the measures that we needed to make sure we bolstered the economy.
Listen, if you're the man, you need to get this word out. You get this word out, and it needs to be done. And I feel that anyone that's coming into property, I think a lot of people always hear about the horror stories and the what ifs and all this other stuff. And I feel that if this process is in place, it will encourage a lot more people to come into the space and feel a bit more confident. Because
the reality is we haven't met new homes, targets ever in the last however many years. I'm going to guess and say it's 20, 30 years plus.
And why do you think that is? Do you feel like the process is there
The process is so archaic.
Yeah.
Obviously the government aren't able to meet new homes criteria. So then it goes down to, okay, you need private entities to help bolster the new homes that are created. And I'm not stupid to say I think they you know, we can create. I think it's Keir Starmer said he wanted to create 1.5 million new homes. It's not realistic over like a space of time, but we can definitely help, and it's better to go halfway than just give up and not deliver at all. But I think definitely the whole process of planning needs to be streamlined.
100%. I feel like it's the small guys at the bottom that tend to get hit the most. I don't feel the bigger.
But then, so I had Anthony Laville. Do you know Anthony?
Yeah.
So Anthony, and obviously he does very large stuff. He's got a pipeline of like 100 million.
Okay.
And he was saying, walk into a planning office for a new scheme for 200 units, and you just look at him like, yeah, I'll call you later. Like, so I think and he's saying like this is the same from him all the way up to national home builders that are doing
same attitude.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, well, it's just my job. So I think definitely there needs to be something changed in regard to attitude, and hopefully we can use conversations like this and magnify them to have conversations with the wider audience. But back to the HMO space, you obviously mentioned a lot of people want to get into it, and we've spoken about some of the downside of the planning space. But the reason you're in property is because it's financially rewarding. Like, and a lot of people talk about the rental market like sort of struggling because of interest rates going up, but HMOs are one way to combat that. If you're looking at monthly net returns from a HMO in London, what would you say is a good return?
I would say a good return in London, I think if you're making, after interest and all the other payments, if you're clearing at least 2,500 to 3,000, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good.
And that's great.
So let's kind of work that deal backwards. So your process is you buy, you refurbish, you add value, whether it be through reconfiguration, rear extensions, loft conversions.
Yeah.
You then rent them out on a room-by-room basis under license or full planning, and then you refinance, right?
That's correct.
So when you refinance, I'm understanding from the London model, you're leaving a bit in, or are you able to get all of your money out? Where are you sort of at?
So two of my HMOs, I was able to get all the money out, and one of them I had to leave a bit of money in because that's just how it is in London.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it goes back to that same question. A lot of people always ask me, how do you do HMOs in London? It's so expensive. But, people tend to go up north and do it there because it's cheaper, right? And what I find in London is that you need to potentially get at the right price.
Always.
Sometimes that's not always the case. And another thing is maybe you can see how you can add potential to it. And for me, I always look at it in terms of the investment, the return on investment, and the rental. What I'm going to get rental wise from it. So if I can clear 2,500, 3,000, or 4,000, or 5,000 for it profit, long term it makes sense for me. And the capital appreciation on that asset as well is going to, it's going to go up.
No, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So like, just so people kind of understand a deal or a typical deal for you, you can use one as an example. Yeah. So of a recent property, what would like a purchase price be?
Yeah. So I'll talk about my best deal, and so it was a property in Forest Hill, and I picked it up for 425.
And where did you find it? Open market, auction?
That was direct to vendor.
Direct to vendor.
Direct to vendor. So
how did you go about getting that direct to vendor?
Funny enough, I was managing the property originally, only for a month or so before I approached her to say, I want to buy your property. And I approached her because I noticed that there were certain letters coming to the house. And I was thinking, okay, let me see what's going on here. And then she wanted to sell as well. So yeah, I picked it up for 425. And in that area, our property's worth about 700-ish at that time. It was very run down. And I spent 120,000 on it. Done a rear extension and reconfigured internally and spruced it up. And the end value on that was 825 on that.
So if you sort of bought for 45, 125, costs you're at 550, and then cost of finance, stamp duty, maybe give or take sort of your 600, 625-ish around that sort of ballpark.
Exactly.
And you refinanced at
825, yeah.
So 75% loan to value?
I done 80% loan to
80%.
value.
Okay, so then that's because at 80%.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we look at. When you refinance, you're not paying tax on getting that money back. So you get your money back.
Yeah.
And then now you've got cash flow.
Exactly.
And your cash flow. And so realistically, if you get all your money back out, that's an unlimited percent ROI.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. It's like a free property to me. And in a sense, I've had to work maybe for about 7 to 8 months, stress, getting this over the line. Then after that, it's a free property and it's paying me 3K a month, and forget about it. And then let's go and do it again.
And I'm trying to think where she go. Let's talk about the stress. When it comes to build teams, managing builders, just the whole we spoke about planning. Where are like your pain points in the property development life cycle? What stresses you out the most?
So many.
So many.
So many. Funny enough, when people see me, they say I never look stressed, but I'm stressed inside.
Yeah, I think you know, some people have like a stressed face, stressed eyes. Yeah, you always seem very relaxed.
I seem relaxed, chilled, but I'm stressed inside. It's the builders, and it's just to be fair, I've got a good build team, but sometimes it's just sometimes you feel like you're working with kids sometimes in terms of trying to get things done, and they're not understanding you and that communication, and you always have to be checking and just making sure everything is just right. And sometimes that process can be stressful.
Do you spend much time on site yourself?
Yeah. So constantly, I have to be there just to make sure I know where the money is being spent, and obviously just have a control of the spending as well. I have control of what's going on, and to make sure that everything's been done in the best way possible. And also for me, it's learning as well. Yeah. So when I'm there, I'm also learning new things and things I don't understand or things I don't know. And anything I don't know, I'm hitting up a few of my mates in the property industry and like, what do you think about this? You understand? So,
that's always really good to ask questions. Asking questions is a massive key. Who do you find your most stressful trade in general?
It's usually the plumbers.
It's the plumbers. Do you know what? Right now, my plumber's good. If you need a good plumber, shout me. I've got a good plumber. Do you know who gets me? But they're not a trade in this because I don't use them all the time.
Okay.
But it's roofers.
Oh, the roofers.
I always struggle to have a good roofer. And like now I've got to the point where I think roofers have given me PTSD. When it starts raining a lot, I think, come on, don't let a roof go. Because you don't use them all the time. And when you need them, you need somebody who's amazing and just there.
Exactly.
And they're not. And then you can't even see the work anyway because like they're going up on a mad ladder or scaffolding and all of this. So
trust their word that everything's all done.
So I'm more than happy to take recommendations for good roofers, guys. If any of you are good roofers and want to work, cover the London area, myself and a load of other developers are more than happy to get in touch. So, okay, so the trades are stressing you. Sometimes you feel like you're managing kids. But obviously, we've spoken about the remunerations financially and it's still worthwhile. You being on site all the time, is that something you'd want to do like for a long? Would you enjoy it still?
Long term, that's not the plan. The plan is to ideally streamline everything. But at this stage now, I still need to be there. I don't have that big team, to say, okay, I need you to go and do this, or I need you to go and do that. So at this point now, I still need to be there to make sure everything is running smoothly. And and it makes sense. But long term, ideally, it would be to streamline it where I don't need to be there. I can be somewhere hot and sunny
on a beach. I see you enjoying. I see you in the Caribbean. South America.
You have to enjoy your hard work as well.
Of course.
And I've been working so hard over the years, and there's been certain points where I don't do nothing because I'm just always going for the next one, doing this, doing that. And someone told me you need to enjoy it. You
Step back and smell the roses.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the last year. That's what I've been doing. I've just been doing a lot of traveling. Plan to do a lot of traveling this year as well. And just trying to enjoy. But at the same time, still need to be working as well.
No, definitely. I do hear that. And what your design-wise, mostly, I think when I've seen yours, you do a lot of ensuite rooms.
Yeah.
And why? Is that just to maximize value, or is that because that's the type of end tenant that you use?
So maximize value, and also understanding the end user as well, which I think is very important. So anyone that's trying to get into HMO space, think about who your end user is going to be, and then that will give you a decision in terms of the level of what you're going to do in terms of the standard, whether you need en suites or not, whether you need a lounge, a big kitchen, a garden, etc. And you know where to spend the money, if that makes any sense. So yeah, for me, it's key. And I know managing HMOs prior, that was the biggest problem with tenants complaining about sharing a bathroom.
Facilities, yeah. Because I think, look, who's your general tenant type? Because we've spoken about, obviously, different sectors. Are you private? Are you using, like, council schemes? Who do you generally rent to yourself?
At the moment, it's mixed now. It's mixed. So before, it was just private. It was private, but obviously there's been a shift in the market, and the rental is a bit more favorable. So I've kind of, some properties are in the social sector. But generally, the private tenants are your normal day-to-day, workers. But at the same time, I've got bankers in my HMOs. I've got football players in my HMOs. I've got estate agents in my HMOs. It's all different types of backgrounds.
I think that's interesting that the tenant archetype, there's often a misconception that it's just because it's the lowest value of property in comparison to one beds, two beds, houses, etc. That you're not gonna have professionals, but because starting salaries, particularly in London, are not that high in comparison to property prices. I've seen some, when people are showing me their tenant types, they're like, well, we got a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse. They've got a 5-bed HMO of an African parent's dream children in terms of jobs.
Exactly. And it makes sense because if I have a family and if I have kids and I want to save money, I would happily go into a self-contained room in a great location. And if that's going to save me money, that's going to save me money. I've got no shame about that.
Yeah, no, it's convenient.
And it makes sense.
It makes sense for loads of reasons. Let's say, for example, where your priorities lie. Some people want loads of space in the garden because they love a dog. Yeah. And they would more than happily commute for an hour to get in and out of London to have that extra space. Whereas some people want convenience and say, I want to be 10 minutes from my work and I work in the heart of Battersea where property is really expensive. I just want to be able to get home. I don't spend much time in my room, but I want to be in and out. So it's always really about creating those spaces that are fit for purpose. And when I've seen your HMOs, I can really see that, a design element goes into it, that you're creating little homes within the rooms, which I think is really nice.
And that probably comes from the background of design. So I studied design at uni.
Oh, wow.
Yes, graphic design, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I was a teacher of graphic design for a couple of years as well.
Can you redo my logo? I'm really not, I feel like we need to update this.
Nah, your logo's
is it all right?
Calm,
do you know this logo? I think, you know it's funny? When you start a business, this logo was one of those, I went on Fiverr, I said, I need a logo. They sent me this. I'm like, all right, cool, let's go. We're starting the gram.
Nah, the logo works.
Is it all right, yeah?
The logo works, and I've seen you, obviously, you embody the colours as well.
Yeah, we always branding everything, even that down to the mics.
Exactly. So, no, it works. But that's where the design element comes from as well, in terms of...
So you actually enjoy that still?
Yeah, that's the part that I enjoy.
I was saying this, I was speaking to somebody last week, and they were saying they love the construction side, and I was like, for me, I get when I'm just looking at plastered walls and partitions, I'm like, right, we may see in progress, but it doesn't feel like real progress until there's paint on the wall and I'm picking color schemes and I'm thinking, how are the radiators going to kind of match with, I don't know, the ironmongery in the doors and things like that.
Exactly. I remember there was one of my HMO projects. I had an interior designer support me in the process, and she was picking a lot of sort of ideas and this, and I was still getting involved. I was still much but I think this. Even though I'm paying her to do it, I'm still much getting involved and saying, nah, I don't think this. I
probably
think that.
Stressing her out.
I probably was. She told me that it was stressful because I think if you really enjoy that part, you've got a vision and you want to execute to the point where I think there was one property I made a silly mistake of picking the flooring, just ordering it online. And it came, and the builders already started putting it down, some parts of it. And I came to see it, and I was just like, oh. In my face, you can see it already that I'm not happy with it. And I went home, slept on it, and I woke up the next day, and I told the builder, I was like, take it off.
Yeah, now you got listen. I've been to see now we got the PBK Community, and see my thing is very much about quality of finish because I think what you do now is gonna kind of dictate where you go and where people see you going in the expectation. So my sites, even when I've seen some of the community members and I've seen certain things, and I've just had to like take it onto the side and say, that's not good enough. You know, in terms of like, maybe you can tell the builders rushed it and they've used a blunt blade to cut tiles and there's loads of chips coming down where the grout lines meet. You're like, look, it's going to be there for a long time and it's a reflection of you.
Of course.
So I think it's really good when people can say, yeah, we're going to maybe pay a little bit more in labour, a little bit more in materials, but to have, you're here for, you know, a long time, not a good time, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and if I'm holding these properties long term, I want to make sure that they're fit for purpose and the tenants, they stay there for a long period. And in terms of the properties that are private tenanted at the moment, the turnover is minimal.
That's interesting. So obviously, so you're creating these like, you know, nice spaces for working professionals within areas that you've grown up. But a lot of the perception of landlords online is like money grabbers, like, you know, ruining the economy. Like, how does that, you know, that fit with what you felt as being a portfolio landlord now?
Yeah, I don't think that's the case at all in terms of, well, there are some landlords out there that obviously they operate their business in a certain way. But I feel like we in this space, we think about the end user and we make sure that everything is correct. You know, we make sure everything is safe. We do everything to the right standard. And also, I feel there's an element of love that we put into the property as well. We don't realize it, but there's a little something we just panache, we just put in there, and that's it. And so I feel like there's a lot of good landlords out there, and to be honest with you, the money that we're making is it's not that much. If I be honest with you, compared to the amount of work that we put in, there's other businesses that you can do that you can make a lot more money from. Yeah. So I this whole idea that we just, you know,
like hoarding properties, you're providing a core service, and there's a need for a private rental sector.
100%.
Not everybody wants to buy a house. Also, a lot of people don't want to buy their room, but want to buy a house, and that facilitates something they want to get in the longer term. Well, not everybody's saying I want to settle down. Some people want to be in London for 3 years while they study or while they do a course and then want to go elsewhere. So I think it definitely makes sense. In terms of attitudes, what about outside of, so not the wider community, let's sort of bring it closer to home. How do you feel like speaking to friends that maybe are not in the same position as you, and you know you're buying, you're building a portfolio, a multi-million pound portfolio? What's the attitudes of sort of friends and people you've grown up with been like?
So it's been positive. It's been very positive. And when I started buying properties, you know, you got your friendship group, and when you see one person do something, somebody else naturally follows. So in my friendship group, I was the one that bought the first property.
Because you bought your first property at
21.
20, that's amazing.
And then naturally everyone else started following. And I've always been that person that I want everyone to win. You know, if I'm doing what I'm doing, I want you to win as well. If there's a way I can help you, let's JV, let's do something here. Of course. Because there's no point you being up at a certain level, spending money, or, you know, living a certain life if your friends are not at that same level as well. That's how I feel. Well, friends and family, I guess. Yeah. So even my brothers, for example, I've got quite a few brothers. My dad's been busy. But I've educated them to get on the property ladder as well. And a lot of them got properties as well. And they're doing their thing in great locations, investments, HMOs, all that sort of stuff. They're not active online, but they're doing their thing as well.
Now that must be great to see, and a great feeling that you're able to obviously give back and have an impact on your local community.
And also one thing that what made me really happy, when I say to you, I used to be a teacher. So when I left teaching, I'm still in contact with a lot of the students there. And one of the students realized that I was doing property, and, you know, he wanted to get into property, and I'm advising him, helping him with that process. Obviously it takes a couple months, whatever. Now I get a message from him saying, "Sir, you done it. You helped me get my graphic design GCSE, and now you helped me get a house." And I was like, wow. Yeah,
so mad nice feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. I was like, it's crazy how things work out.
No, the giving back, like, I know it sounds like, I feel like people thinking, oh yeah, but like, I was at and I saw you there. Sorry, I saw you at the FFG event. Yeah. And I was there, and someone was just talking about how's it going, how's I saw you started the community, and I was talking about one of my guys, the youngest guy, just turned 20, he's 19 at the time, but he bought his first home at 19. And I was like, explaining the story to somebody else, I was getting like actual goosebumps. Like I'm so buzzing, like that you can be part of such a journey.
Exactly.
It's amazing. There was a question I thought, and I've said to you off camera, like for me, I love these podcasts 'cause I get to talk to genuine people that are genuinely now my friends that I've built relationships with in property. But also like sometimes it's like a mini therapy session. It's also like quite selfish on my part. Like I hope you enjoy the sessions.
Yeah.
But on my part, it's like a mini therapy session. And one thing I wanted to kind of ask you about is you're dealing with these massive numbers. Like and sometimes like it's like it's a blessing, but it's mad stressful. Like so when I don't know, like your lender is down valuing something by like 100 grand, for example. Do you ever find it difficult to maybe have conversations with some people that are not doing that? Because it sounds a bit weird, like complaining about numbers of that magnitude to somebody who's maybe, you know, on X amount per hour.
Yeah. You know, I feel like your friendship group, everyone has a position. So it's not that you always need to run to the person that is on a higher level or earning a certain amount, and they're the only ones that can understand. Even having that friend that is not even in that space can give you some certain advice that you don't even think about. They might just say, just chill, like why are you over stressing for? You've got this in the background, you've got that in the background, or you know, they might give you another advice that will help that process. So I feel talking is key.
Yeah,
talking is key, and I've always been someone before that I didn't really talk that as much, but expressing what's on your mind, what you're going through, can help that process. If and especially with property, things will go wrong, and online you may not see it because everyone's obviously posting their great moments because that's what social media is for. But there are things in the background that do go wrong, and you need to reach out to certain people so they can give you advice to help you out. And don't feel shy, because everyone makes mistakes. Yeah, definitely. And I've been on the phone to a few people, man. A lot of people know my dark secrets in the property game, and they would tell me, you know, you're being silly. Do this, do that. Oh, call this person, and you know, and then we go from there.
And that's it. Yeah, so it's like a problem shared. It's a problem halved.
100%. But if you stay in your shell. And that's when problems will happen, and that's why it's key that you set up the PBK community, and that's a community that people can connect and talk and.
Because I would love to be in a place where I could be like, I'm going to mentor you, and you, but realistically, I'm still on my own learning journey. I'm still trying to become the best property developer, investor I can.
You're still active.
But I didn't want to just leave people in the lurch. So I said, okay, how can I create something where I'm able to help people? What would I have wanted starting out? So to start a community where you have access to that power team, to an architect, to an accountant, to a structural engineer, to a mains broker, to an estate agent, you know, to a load of other people that are really intrinsically important in that property space that you can use as a sounding board to just ask questions. So you can stop yourself from making those expensive mistakes. And it's been amazing. Like, you know, in terms of, I think when I look at it and I'm like, so we had like our 1 year anniversary about a month ago. And I was just talking to like my Simone, who's been like super helpful in like getting it off the ground. And I was like, out of these like 80 members, we've got like a 50 million GDV pipeline. Crazy. And I was like, that's actually crazy. It's just like say, that was just created out of people saying, you know what, we want to invest in ourselves, we want to be better, we want to be part of a group. So I think if I can roll that out and just try and help a few more people, build out that community and build out opportunities where we're having those conversations, just highlight the great opportunities that are there, but also stop each other from making mistakes that maybe we've already made if you're a little bit further on in your journey.
100%, it's key. It's so important. It's so important. You never stop learning. You never stop learning. I'm learning every single day, and you never stop learning.
That's it. And it's great. Like, it's great to be in a place where, you know, it's great to be experienced, but it's way better to be the person who can leverage somebody else's experience.
Exactly. And I think like we spoke about before, when you're in certain rooms and you're seeing what other people are doing, you're like, wow, there's actually more here. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? What I'm doing is even small fry compared to what these guys are doing here. And it makes you think bigger. And that's naturally how how your journey goes. You start from a certain point and then you decide to, okay, you know what, I'm going to try this now. There's something new, I'm going to try this now. And then you start connecting with those people that are in that space to see how they can help you and then move on there.
No, definitely. Listen, it's been amazing having you on. I think now I feel like I've learned a little bit more about, the Muiz. I know that I can see where the design comes from understanding your educational background, can see where, the ability to very succinctly explain things comes from the teaching space. See, we wish you all the best. If people want to connect with you, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and apologies that it's taking so long.
Nice.
But we're here. So yeah, you want to reach out to me as I am Muiz Official on Instagram and all other platforms as well. I promise I'm gonna be more active as well, and obviously I've got a few projects coming very soon, so you're gonna see me plastering stuff all over the social media.
Don't worry, by force. He's going to be there, but wherever or not he wants to be, he's going to be there by force. We're going to go down, make sure we do a lovely development tour, get some befores and afterwards. If you've got any questions about HMOs, let us know in the comments, or when we go and do the development tour, we make sure we ask them directly so we get those long form answers. We're going to be back next week with another amazing episode. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. If you want to know more about the PBK community, the link will be in the bio. And we're going to catch you all again real soon.